You're not capable of making these decisions anymore. Those were my daughter's exact words, to my face, in a probate attorney's office, with her husband nodding beside her while I sat 10 feet away. At a competency hearing they'd initiated to declare me mentally incompetent because I'd gotten remarried. What Jessica didn't know was that I'd been managing my late wife's investment portfolio, my retirement funds, and quietly paying $60,000 in medical bills for the past 2 years for someone else's family. But I'm getting ahead of myself. 6 months earlier, it started with a phone call. I was in the kitchen making coffee when my phone rang. Jessica. I hadn't heard from her in 3 weeks. Dad, we need to talk. Her voice had that edge, the one that meant she'd already decided something. Good morning to you too, I said, setting down the coffee pot. This isn't funny. Brad and I heard you got married. Is that true? I leaned against the counter. Elena and I got married last month, yes. The silence stretched for 5 seconds. You barely knew her. We've known each other for 2 years. You met her at some grief group. That's not the same as really knowing someone. I poured cream into my mug slowly and let her talk. This is embarrassing, Dad. People are talking. You're 75 years old. And it looks like you were manipulated. Everyone thinks so. Everyone? I asked. Our friends. The neighbors. Aunt Carol called me yesterday. She's concerned about your judgment, about this woman taking advantage of you. I took a sip of coffee. Elena isn't taking advantage of anyone. Jessica's voice got sharper. You changed your will. Don't think I don't know. I updated my estate plan. Yes, it's my estate. Dad, you're not thinking clearly. Grief does things to people. You lost Mom, and now some woman shows up, and suddenly you're signing documents. Her name is Elena. Some woman shows up, and suddenly you're making her a beneficiary? I hung up. My hands were steady, and the coffee tasted fine. I thought that was just hurt feelings, a daughter worried about her father. I was wrong. 2 weeks later, the legal documents arrived. Jessica and Brad were filing for a competency evaluation, claiming I showed signs of diminished capacity, claiming Elena had manipulated a vulnerable widower. They wanted guardianship, to protect me, to protect the money, more like it. What they didn't know was that I'd been the one doing the protecting, just not them. I read the petition 3 times that night, sitting in my study with the curtains open and the city lights blinking in the distance. The language was careful, clinical. Subject demonstrates uncharacteristic behavior patterns. Subject entered into marriage with individual met in compromised emotional state. Subject has made significant changes to estate planning without consultation with family members. Financial irregularities suggest possible undue influence. Subject, not father, not Robert. Subject, I'd met Elena at a grief support group 2 years earlier. My wife Catherine had been gone 6 months, and I was drowning in an empty house that still smelled like her perfume. Elena volunteered there. She'd lost her husband to a heart attack 3 years before that, and she understood the specific loneliness of being 70 and starting over. We talked after meetings, coffee at first, then dinners. She made me laugh again, which I didn't think was possible. She never asked about money, never asked about the house or the investments or what Catherine had left behind. When her mother got sick a year into our friendship, stage 3 colon cancer, Elena tried to handle it alone. I found out by accident when she canceled dinner 3 weeks in a row. I offered to help. She refused. I helped anyway, quietly arranging payments through the hospital's financial office. Her mother needed treatment, and Elena's teacher salary couldn't cover what insurance wouldn't pay. 6 months later, we started dating. 6 months after that, I proposed. It was the easiest decision I'd made in years, but Jessica hadn't bothered to learn any of that. She'd never met Elena, never accepted a dinner invitation, never returned Elena's calls, and now she wanted guardianship. I was still reading the petition when headlights swept across my driveway. A car door slammed, heavy footsteps on the porch. The doorbell rang twice, sharp and impatient. I opened it. Jessica stood there with Brad half a step behind her, both of them dressed like they'd come from somewhere important. We need to talk, Jessica said, pushing past me into the hallway. Good evening to you too. Don't start, Dad. Where's Elena? At her mother's house. Why? Good. Jessica dropped her purse on the entry table and turned to face me. This doesn't have to get ugly. I closed the door slowly. What doesn't? Brad stepped forward. We filed the competency petition because we care about you, Robert. We're worried. You're worried about my will. Jessica's face flushed. That's not fair, isn't it? I asked. You changed it 3 weeks ago. Added her name to everything. The house, the retirement accounts, the investments. That's not normal behavior for someone grieving. I've been grieving for 3 years. At what point am I allowed to move forward? Not like this, Jessica said. Not with someone who's clearly taking advantage of you. Elena has never asked me for a single thing. Then why did you give her $60,000? The room went very still. I looked at Brad. You've been checking my bank accounts? He had the decency to look uncomfortable. Jessica asked me to review your finances. As family, we have a responsibility. To spy on me? To protect you, Jessica cut in. And those transfers prove she's manipulating you. $60,000, Dad, to her family. That's financial abuse. I walked to the window and looked out at the street. Funny, I said quietly. I always thought abuse was when someone tried to control your choices, take away your autonomy, treat you like you weren't capable of managing your own life. Jessica's voice softened, which somehow made it worse. Dad, I know you think you love her. I do love her, but you're vulnerable right now, and she knows it. This is what predators do. They find lonely people and… I turned around. Get out! Gad! Get out of my house! Brad touched Jessica's arm. Maybe we should give him some space. Jessica grabbed her purse. Fine, but this doesn't end here. The hearing is in 2 weeks. If you won't protect yourself, we will. They left. The house felt very quiet. I thought that was the worst of it. Jessica, embarrassing herself, making accusations she couldn't prove, trying to save face with a competency hearing that wouldn't go anywhere. I was wrong. What I didn't know yet was that she'd already contacted 3 of my former colleagues from the aerospace firm, asking them if they'd noticed signs of cognitive decline. She'd called my doctor's office, claiming to be concerned about my medication management. She'd even driven by the house twice to photograph Elena's car in the driveway, building a timeline of suspicious behavior. She wasn't just worried. She was building a case. And I realized, sitting there in the dark, watching her taillights disappear down the street, that I needed to let her dig, let her gather her evidence, let her walk into that hearing confident she'd win, because I had something she didn't know about. I had the truth. The next morning, I went to the basement. My filing system was 40 years old. Metal cabinets organized by year and category, every document labeled and indexed. Catherine used to joke that I could find a grocery receipt from 1987 if I needed to. I needed to now. I pulled the investment portfolio files first. 5 years of quarterly statements, trade confirmations, and performance reports. My retirement accounts, Catherine's trust, the mutual funds I'd rebalanced last spring, all managed personally, all showing complex decision-making that proved cognitive sharpness. Then the bank statements. 3 years of transfers, highlighted and annotated. Every payment to Elena's mother's oncology center. Every wire to her brother's restaurant creditors. Dates, amounts, purposes. A paper trail that told the real story. I made copies of everything. That afternoon, Elena came home early from the community center where she volunteered. I heard her car in the driveway, then her footsteps in the kitchen. She called my name, but her voice was wrong. Tight and small. I found her at the kitchen table, holding a piece of paper. Her hands were shaking. Robert, what is this? She'd opened my mail, the court notification about the hearing. I sat down across from her. That's my daughter trying to prove I'm incompetent. Because of me. Because she's afraid of losing money she never earned. Elena's eyes filled. This says they're claiming I manipulated you. That I took advantage of your grief. That I… She stopped, unable to finish. I reached across the table. You didn't. It doesn't matter what I did or didn't do, she said quietly. This is happening because you married me, because you changed your will, because you helped my family, because Jessica is greedy, I corrected. Elena wiped her eyes. I can't let you go through this. The hearing, the lawyers, people thinking you're not capable? I smiled without humor. Let them think it. Let them say it in front of a judge. Let them build their entire case on that assumption. What do you mean? I mean, I'm going to let her dig her own hole. Elena stood up, pacing to the window. No, this is too much. I'll leave. I'll tell the court we're separating. I'll give back everything you'll do no such thing. Robert, I can't watch them tear you apart because of me. They're not tearing me apart, I said calmly. They're exposing themselves, and when they're done, I'm going to show them exactly how wrong they are. She turned back to me. How? I pulled out one of the bank statements and slid it across the table. This is from 2 years ago, 3 months before we even started dating. See this transfer? That was the first payment for your mother's treatment. Elena, I was helping your family before we were anything more than friends. She stared at the statement. I didn't know it was that early. You tried to stop me, I reminded her. You said your family's problems weren't mine to solve. You even offered to set up a payment plan to pay me back, remember? I remember you refused. Because it wasn't a loan. It was what I wanted to do with my money, and Jessica doesn't get to tell me otherwise. Elena sat down again, slower this time. What are you going to do? I'm going to that hearing. I'm going to let Jessica present her case. Every accusation, every piece of evidence she thinks she has. And then I'm going to prove she's wrong about everything. But I didn't tell Elena the rest. I didn't tell her about the competency evaluation I'd already scheduled with Dr. Sandra Calvin, the court-appointed psychologist. I didn't tell her about the 5-year investment history I was compiling. I didn't tell her that I wanted Jessica to feel confident, to walk into that hearing believing she'd already won. What Jessica didn't know was that I had something she'd never expect. The next day, I called Thomas Park. He'd been my accountant for 30 years, handling my taxes and retirement planning since I'd left the aerospace firm. He knew every dollar I'd earned, saved, and spent. Thomas, I need your help organizing some financial records. What kind of records? The kind that prove I'm not senile. He laughed, then stopped when I didn't join him. Wait, you're serious? I explained the situation. The petition. The accusations. Jessica's claims about financial irregularities. Thomas was quiet for a moment. Robert, your portfolio performance last year beat the market average by 3 points. You restructured your bond allocation in response to interest rate changes. You executed a tax loss harvesting strategy in October. If you're senile, I'd like to be that senile. Can you document that? I can have a summary ready in 2 days. Make it detailed, I said. Trade dates, decision rationale, performance metrics. I want it clear that these weren't random button clicks. These were informed financial decisions. You're really going to fight this? I'm really going to win this. That's when I decided to let her dig her own hole. This is elder vengeance, where assumptions about age and wisdom always backfire. Subscribe right now, because when I walked into that competency hearing with my accountant and 5 years of financial records, the look on Jessica's face was everything. Here's what happened. Over the next 10 days, Jessica got busy. Aunt Carol called to say Jessica had reached out, asking about my memory and whether I'd seemed confused lately. 2 of my former colleagues from the aerospace firm contacted me directly, apologizing for Jessica's intrusive questions about my mental state. My doctor's office left a voicemail saying they couldn't discuss my medical information with family members, despite Jessica's repeated calls. She was thorough. I had to give her that. She was also making it worse for herself with every phone call. The hearing was scheduled for Thursday morning, 10 o'clock, at the probate attorney's office downtown. I arrived 15 minutes early with Thomas, carrying a briefcase full of documents organized by category and date. Jessica and Brad were already there, sitting across from their lawyer, a man in his 40s named Mitchell Green, who looked like he billed by the minute. Dr. Calvin sat at the head of the table, the court-appointed evaluator who'd interviewed me for 2 hours the previous week. Jessica looked confident, almost relieved. She thought this would be quick, a formality, an elderly man admitting he'd made mistakes, agreeing to some oversight, maybe walking back the will changes. She had no idea what was in my briefcase. I sat down, set the briefcase on the table, and waited. Mitchell Green opened a leather folder and cleared his throat. Thank you all for being here today. This preliminary hearing concerns the petition filed by Jessica Clark Morrison regarding the mental competency of her father, Robert Clark. Mr. Green, you may present your case. Jessica's lawyer nodded. Thank you. Our position is straightforward. Robert Clark, 75 years old, has exhibited significant changes in behavior and judgment over the past 18 months that suggest diminished cognitive capacity. He slid a document across the table. We have statements from family members noting increased forgetfulness, misplaced keys, missed appointments, confusion about dates. He forgot his grandson's birthday in March. He asked his sister the same question twice in one phone conversation. Normal aging, Thomas muttered beside me. Green continued. More concerning are the financial irregularities. Mr. Clark transferred $60,000 to individuals connected to Elena Vasquez over a 2-year period. He changed his will 3 weeks after remarrying, adding Mrs. Dicid Indifferent Vasquez as primary beneficiary to accounts worth over $2 million. He made these decisions without consulting family, without seeking independent counsel, and, we believe, under undue influence from Mrs. Vasquez, who he met during a period of profound grief and vulnerability. Jessica leaned forward. Dad, we're not trying to hurt you. We just want to make sure you're protected. Protected from what? I asked quietly. From making decisions you'll regret. Brad nodded. Robert, you're not yourself. Anyone can see that. This marriage happened too fast. The money transfers don't make sense, and we're worried that I'm being manipulated? I finished. Yes. Dr. Calvin looked up from her notes. Mr. Green, do you have additional evidence to present? We have testimony from 3 of Mr. Clark's former colleagues who noted he seemed distracted and withdrawn at a retirement dinner last year. We have medical records showing he's been prescribed medication for anxiety following his wife's death. And we have the financial records showing the pattern of transfers that began shortly after he met Mrs. Vasquez. Green closed his folder. Your Honor, we're asking for a temporary guardianship arrangement while a full cognitive evaluation is conducted, just until we can ensure Mr. Clark is making informed decisions. Jessica's face was calm, almost sympathetic. She thought she'd won. Dr. Calvin turned to me. Mr. Clark, would you like to respond? I let them finish, every word, every accusation. Then I opened my briefcase. Yes, I said, I would. I pulled out the first document and slid it to Dr. Calvin. This is my investment portfolio performance over the past 5 years. You'll notice that in the last 18 months, the period during which I'm supposedly cognitively impaired, I restructured my bond allocation in response to federal interest rate changes, executed a tax loss harvesting strategy that saved me $43,000, and rebalanced my equity positions to reduce volatility exposure. Thomas added, those decisions beat market average by 3.2% last year. I pulled out the second document. This is the timeline of my relationship with Elena. We met at a grief support group in February 2 years ago. We became friends. In August that same year, her mother was diagnosed with stage 3 colon cancer. Elena tried to handle it alone. I offered to help with medical expenses. She refused. Jessica's expression shifted slightly. I helped anyway, I continued, because I wanted to, because her mother needed treatment, and Elena's salary couldn't cover it. The first payment was made in September, 3 months before Elena and I had our first dinner that wasn't at the support group, 6 months before we started dating, a full year before I proposed. I slid the bank statements across the table. Every transfer is documented. Hospital payments, oncology center bills, creditor settlements for her brother's failing restaurant. Elena didn't ask for any of it. In fact, I pulled out another document. These are email exchanges where Elena explicitly tried to refuse my help and set up payment plans to pay me back. I declined. This wasn't manipulation, it was generosity. Green flipped through the statements, his confidence fading. As for my mental capacity, I said, I had a full evaluation with Dr. Okonkwo last week. Perhaps she'd like to share her findings? Dr. Calvin opened her report. I conducted a comprehensive cognitive assessment including memory tests, executive function evaluation, and decision-making analysis. Mr. Making Analysis. Clark scored well above average for his age group. His recall is excellent, his logical reasoning is intact, and he demonstrates no signs of cognitive impairment beyond normal aging. In my professional opinion, he is fully capable of managing his own affairs. I pulled out the final document. This is my will, the original and the updated version. Yes, I added Elena as a beneficiary. I also maintained provisions for Jessica, established trusts for my grandchildren, and made substantial charitable donations. The changes were reasonable and reflect my current life circumstances. I closed my briefcase and looked directly at Jessica. You claim I was manipulated for money. I've been the one giving it. Elena's mother had stage 3 cancer. I paid for treatments her insurance wouldn't cover. Elena's brother's restaurant was failing. I helped restructure his debt. Elena didn't ask for any of it. She tried to stop me. The financial irregularity you're concerned about? That's called generosity. Jessica's face had gone pale. You never met her, I continued. Never accepted a dinner invitation. Never asked about my life or whether I was happy. You saw the will changes and assumed the worst. You hired investigators to check my bank accounts. You called my doctor. You contacted my colleagues. You built an entire case on the assumption that I'm too old and too grief-stricken to know my own mind. My voice stayed level, calm. But I'm sitting here with 5 years of complex financial management. I'm sitting here with documentation proving every decision I made was informed and intentional. I'm sitting here with a psychologist's report stating I'm mentally sharp. What are you sitting there with, Jessica? She opened her mouth. Nothing came out. Dr. Calvin closed her folder. Based on the evidence presented, I see no grounds for guardianship or conservatorship. Mr. Brent, Clark is clearly competent to manage his own affairs. Green looked at Jessica, then at his notes, then back at Dr. Calvin. Your Honor, perhaps we could. There's nothing to pursue, Dr. Calvin said firmly. This petition is denied. I stood slowly and looked at Jessica. You're welcome at our home when you're ready to meet my wife, but you're not welcome to my money until you respect my choices. I picked up my briefcase. Thomas and I walked out. Behind us, I heard Brad's voice, quiet and strained. Jesus Christ, Jess, what did we just do? The silence in that conference room lasted about 10 seconds. Then, everything changed. Green stood up first, gathering his papers with quick, jerky movements. Mrs. Morrison, Mr. Morrison, I'll send you my final invoice. This will include the consultation fees, the filing costs, and the hearing preparation. How much? Brad asked. $12,000, Green said flatly. Due within 30 days. Jessica stared at him. 12,000? You initiated a legal challenge. I advised you multiple times that the evidence was weak. You insisted on proceeding. Green left without shaking anyone's hand. Outside in the parking lot, Thomas unlocked his car and looked at me. You knew she'd lose. I knew she had no case, I said. You let her walk into it anyway. I let her make her choice. She chose poorly. Thomas smiled. That accountant's summary was probably overkill. The psych evil alone would have killed the petition. I know, but I wanted her to see everything, to understand exactly how wrong she was. Message received, I think. By that evening, the story had spread. Aunt Carol called me directly. Robert, I'm so sorry. Jessica told me you were confused and forgetful, and I believed her. I should have called you myself. It's fine, Carol. It's not fine. She made me think Elena was taking advantage of you. I feel like an idiot. You were trying to help. I was enabling her paranoia. Carol's voice dropped. Has she called you? Not yet. She won't. She's too embarrassed. But Robert, I'd like to meet Elena sometime. Properly. Jessica's former colleagues from the aerospace firm heard about the hearing through Aunt Carol. One of them, Dennis Kwan, sent me an email that night. Robert heard what happened. For the record, I told Jessica you seemed sharp as ever at the retirement dinner. She twisted my words. I'm sorry for any part I played in that mess. Congratulations on the marriage. Invite me to the next party so I can meet her properly. 2 others sent similar messages. Brad called 3 days later. Robert, it's Brad. I wanted to apologize. This whole thing got out of hand, and I should have pushed back harder when Jessica. You went along with it, I said quietly. I know I did. And I'm sorry. I let her convince me you weren't thinking clearly, and I should have known better. Yes, you should have. Silence on the line. Is there any way we can fix this? Brad asked. That depends on Jessica. She's not handling this well. She's embarrassed, angry, mostly at herself, I think. Good, I said. Maybe that means she's learning something. Elena's mother called that weekend. She was crying before she even said hello. Robert, Elena told me what you did, what you've been doing. I knew you helped with some of the bills, but I didn't know it was. I didn't know it was everything. Mrs. Vasquez, I wanted to help. You saved my life. Do you understand that? Without those treatments, I wouldn't be here. And you never asked for anything. You never made Elena feel like, because she didn't owe me anything, I said gently. Neither do you. She was quiet for a moment. My daughter loves you very much. I love her too. You're a good man, Robert. Your daughter will see that eventually. Maybe, I said. Maybe not. But either way, I'm at peace with my choices. That night, Elena and I sat on the back porch with coffee and watched the sun set behind the neighbor's oak tree. Are you okay? She asked. I'm fine. You just lost your daughter. I didn't lose her. She lost herself. There's a difference. Elena leaned against my shoulder. What happens now? Now? I sipped my coffee. Now we live our lives. We travel like we planned. We visit your mother. We ignore the people who don't matter and appreciate the ones who do. And if Jessica comes back, if she comes back genuinely, with humility and an apology, we'll talk. But I'm not holding my breath. I updated my will that week anyway, not out of spite, out of clarity. Jessica's inheritance was reduced to reflect her actions. The bulk of my estate would go to Elena, with trusts established for my grandchildren that Jessica couldn't touch. Substantial donations to the cancer research center that had treated Elena's mother. My money, my choices. 2 weeks after the hearing, Jessica sent an email. It was 3 sentences long. Dad, I was wrong about Elena and wrong about you. I'm sorry. Can we talk? I read it twice. Then I closed my laptop and didn't respond. Not yet. Some apologies need time to mean something. 3 months later, Elena and I were planning our trip to Portugal. We'd always wanted to go. Catherine and I had talked about it for years but never found the time. Now Elena and I had nothing but time. The house felt lighter somehow, quieter in a good way. On a Tuesday afternoon, Elena's mother visited with homemade tamales and her famous tres leches cake. She hugged me at the door, holding on longer than usual. "Thank you," she whispered, "for everything. Mrs. Vasquez, you've thanked me a dozen times already, and I'll thank you a dozen more." We ate lunch on the porch, the three of us, talking about Elena's childhood and her mother's garden and the family recipe for mole that nobody could quite replicate. Normal things, good things. This was what I'd chosen. This warmth, this connection, this family that had welcomed me without asking for anything in return. That evening, my phone rang. "Jessica." I almost didn't answer. Then I did. "Dad?" Her voice was small, uncertain. "I'm here. I know I sent that email. I know you didn't respond. But I was wondering if maybe I could meet Elena, if that's still possible." I looked at Elena across the living room. She was reading, glasses perched on her nose, completely absorbed in her book. "Why now?" I asked. "Because I was wrong. Because I let fear and greed turn me into someone I don't recognize. Because I miss my father." Her voice cracked on the last word. I was quiet for a moment. "Come to dinner Saturday," I said. 6 o'clock. Bring Brad." Okay, thank you. Dad, I really am. "We'll talk Saturday," I said gently. I don't know if Jessica and I will ever fully repair what broke between us, but I know that I'm 75 years old, and I'm happy. I know that Elena loves me for who I am, not what I have. I know that I made the right choice marrying her, helping her family, living my life on my own terms. And I know that respect isn't something you demand. It's something you earn by making choices you can defend when challenged. Jessica challenged me. I defended myself, and in doing so, I proved something I'd always known. Being 75 doesn't mean you stop living. It means you finally know how. If you're watching this, and you've ever been told you're too old for second chances, drop a comment below. Have you ever had family question your choices because of your age? This is Elder Vengeance, where wisdom defeats assumptions every time. Subscribe for more stories where quiet dignity wins over entitled control. Hit that like button if watching Jessica's case crumble felt like justice. And remember, respect isn't negotiable. Until next time, assumptions are expensive.